Welcome to the CCOM Pawcast. My name's Ross Hollebon, and we're here to remember a CCOM faculty member who recently passed away, but made a huge impact on students, journalism professor Kwadwo Anokwa. I never had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Anokwa, but my guest, Dave Juday, from the class of '94, is here to share his memories of one of the most important mentors in his life, starting when he was a radio television major with a minor in journalism at Butler. Dave, thanks for making the time today, especially on such a quick turnaround after the news came out. But I'd like to start asking, where did this relationship begin? I know you were heavily involved in WAJC, and that's when I was able to meet you a couple years ago. But he was a journalism professor. So how does all of this tie together?
Sure, and thanks for having me on, Ross. And it was sad news when I saw the note from his daughter Afua over the weekend on social media that he had passed away. So going way back, as you mentioned, I'm class of '94, not 94 years old, but class of '94. Back then, so first of all, you had no College of Communications. Butler CCOM didn't exist the way it does now. Radio television was in the Jordan College of Fine Arts. In fact, I was the last graduating class to graduate with a Bachelor of Science in radio television, because that was the degree then. I was heavily involved in WAJC, and that's mainly, that was the number one reason why I went to Butler in the first place, was getting to work at that 48,000 watt radio station for 3 years. But I also wanted, as you said, to minor in journalism. When I told my parents, these are my plans, major in radio TV, minor in journalism, my mom was like, well, can't you pick a backup profession? I'm like, I did. Journalism. Journalism is my backup. I wanted to be the most well-rounded journalist coming out of Butler. I wanted to have the most tools, be the most versatile person that I could be. And so I set out then to take not only the radio TV courses, but also the journalism courses to achieve that for a minor. And back then, they were very, very different sides of the house. You had radio television, which was electronic media, and then you had print. You had journalism, and it was print, and we still had newspapers back then. And you had to approach, I would have to, I'd leave a radio TV class in the morning, I'd take my radio TV hat off, and then I would have Dr. Anokwa in the afternoon, and I'd put my journalism hat on, because they were so different. I first met Dr. Anokwa, I believe it was my freshman year. I don't remember if it was semester 1 or 2, but it was Intro to Mass Communication. And I'm like, okay, this sounds like a cool elective. I'm going to take this. And he came in that day, and he was from Ghana. There was a little bit of a heavy accent, and I think a lot of the students were like, huh? What did he say? What did he say? But I will say, once you fought through getting past the accent and being really able to understand what he was trying to impart on you, things did kind of click, because I learned about his background. He opened up about his background when he was teaching the course. He wasn't just a print guy, but when he was in Ghana, he was a radio guy. His daughter had one of my favorite photos that I've seen of him, one of my favorite old school photos of him in Ghana, back in the day, wearing the headphones they were like, and I wore these in high school. They were like yellow like foam. They were popular back then. But he was a broadcaster at heart. And so learning that from him through class and through conversations outside of class, there just was a connection that I felt with him. And so after I took that Intro to Mass Comm class, every other opportunity I had to take a journalism class, but with him, I did. I jumped at every other opportunity that I could to have a class with him. because I enjoyed his teaching, and I enjoyed being in his class. And he understood the divide between print and broadcast, and he knew that was real, and he understood that. But for me, I also knew he gets it. He gets both sides because he was a broadcaster, and he gets what I'm trying to do.
And that's kind of trailblazing, right? Because of what media has become today, where there is no split at all.
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like I said, I was trying to set myself up for success by, hey, if radio or television doesn't work out, I've got journalism training as well. But like I said, I mean, I think he saw that my passion was in radio, and he understood what I was trying to do. But just because he was teaching journalism, he still was trying to stoke the flame for me on the broadcasting side. He knew that that's what I wanted to do, and he always encouraged me and looked for opportunities where he could point me in the right direction of something. I will say about that mass comm class really quick. He's the one that he taught us shortwave radio. I'll never forget that lesson, because when I was not a poor college student anymore, I went out and I got myself a shortwave radio. He did a unit on shortwave radio, and he would get up at 2:00 in the morning to record stuff that was airing on shortwave, like on Voice of America, in Africa and in Europe. And he then would play those cassettes for us. And I remember there was a VOA sports update, and the guy talked about football, soccer over there, everywhere outside the United States. And he was saying, he's like, that's going to be you someday, David. I know it. I know that's going to be you someday. So lots and lots of good memories. And as you said, it kind of started as a student there. And then I was fortunate that as I became an older student and an upperclassman, and then even beyond graduation, I made it a point to keep in touch with him, because he was somebody important to me that I wanted to keep in my life post-college.
No, that's amazing. And those are the greatest classroom experiences, right? When it transcends outside the classroom, and you really get someone. And you may have touched on it a little bit here already, but what moment did you realize there was this connection, or this like, oh, you know what? You may have great professors, you may have some that you didn't like as much, but this is one that really connected with you. When did that click for you?
I don't know if there was necessarily like an exact point, like where it clicked, but I would have to say certainly after that mass comm class, because I don't know if C&T was a thing for you back in the day. Change and tradition. It was part of the curriculum. No one liked it, and apologies to like the English department. Nobody liked C&T, but we still had to take it. It was a requirement. And I remember the first semester I took with another professor. It was a struggle. It was really a struggle. And then I took Mass Comm, and I met Dr. Anokwa. And then I found out he was teaching C&T the next year, and I needed another semester of it. I'm like, sold, signing up for his class for C&T. And then, like I said, then it was like, I think at that point it had clicked already. I just felt like I was going to learn a lot from him. I mean, there was one, and I think it was a C&T essay where, or either that or it was poli-sci, but I wrote an essay, and it probably wasn't my best work, but I didn't think it was C-worthy. And I was like, dang, I was not expecting this. And I took it to him, and I said, I want you to be blunt and honest with me. Will you please read this essay? And if I were in your class, tell me the grade that you would have given me. And he did. And he gave me honest feedback. And he said it was a B. And I took that conversation then to my other professor, and I'm like, I'm not trying to pin people against each other. I'm having a hard time understanding where the disconnect was with myself and you on this particular topic. And I didn't tell him which professor I had read my paper, but I said I had another professor read it, and he's like, I would given you a low to mid B, and I'm like, I would take that right now, but I appreciated being able to go to him, even as a student, and say, I'm struggling. This isn't your class, but I really think highly of your opinion. And to me, again, I don't know if there was like a moment where it clicked, but I mean, somewhere early on in my college career, I realized that this was somebody that was going to be a mentor that I looked up to and that I greatly respected. And as I said, to become then friends after graduation and have him follow my career. And I mean, I met my wife in college, so he knew Teresa. One thing I didn't mention, I don't know if you know this or not, but he was also, for a while, he was a professor in residence at Resco. So
wow.
he lived on campus.
So he was a fur early on.
Yeah. He lived on campus. He was in one of the Resco faculty apartments, and at the time, his family, his wife Charlotte and his children, they were still in Ghana, and eventually they came and they joined him at Butler at the apartment in Resco.
Oh, wow.
So it's so cool to like run into them all the time. I mean, I remember his kids when they were really, really little.
Yeah, and that's so special how you get to know them. I know currently from CCOM, we have Carly Verone and Dr. Alex Carter are both FERS, faculty in residence, and they love it. And the social media content that they get, because they're embedded there and they're getting to live with these students constantly. So that's amazing hearing he was there and able to bring these different cultural aspects into it as well. Like what additional value for every student that dealt with them, especially within the building.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, I mean, you didn't have to be a journalism student or, for that matter, like have him for a class. But if you lived in Resco, you probably knew who he was because you encountered him, and then later him and his family in your everyday, going about your everyday duties.
Yeah, and in the last couple of days, just asking around the building, both Mark Harris and Chelsea Hennessy, who have been, who are alum, who have been part of and continue to be a part of Butler, just talked about this big personality and this person that was amazing to be around. So it's fun to hear that, and for me to be able to learn from you and them, and just quickly someone who I hadn't heard of previously, and then all of a sudden it's just like it brings these memories to life.
No doubt. He when I first started to date my wife at Butler my freshman year, eventually she was with me and we ran into him and I introduced her to him and vice versa, and you could tell that he took a liking to her right away. You could tell that he embraced her immediately. My wife always said when we were in college, he reminded her of a big teddy bear. He was just such a wonderful guy. And as you said, a big personality, but also he would light up a room, and his laugh and his smile and his personality would light up a room, and it would light up the classroom. But there was no big personality. But a lot of times you meet someone with a big personality and there's a big ego that goes with it. There was no ego. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. Everything he did was all student focused. Everything he did was for the success of his students. But yeah, he could definitely light up a room for sure.
Very good. I know that you are a radio instructor and faculty sports and news director at East Valley Institute of Technology in the Phoenix area, teaching high school and college level students. How did his mentorship, how does that impact your day-to-day and how you're working with students? It sounded like he met you where you are. Is that something that you do now primarily because of that relationship.
Yeah, and I'll say I am so blessed to have had so many wonderful mentors along the way. I had a high school radio station in the Chicago area, which is how I kind of got my foot in the door at WAJC when I started as a freshman. And for me, I've always said, now going into education about 11 years ago, and that's now the second chapter of my professional novel. But when I was in high school, I had Kate Singletary, Jack Weismuth, and Dennis Strecker. And I always said, and there's a picture of them behind me, and there's a picture of Dr. Anokwa and his family behind me. I always said that if I went into education someday after broadcasting, if I could be to and for my students what they were for me when I was in high school, then I will have considered this part of my professional chapter a success. And in college, it was the same way. Dr. Anokwa, Scott Bridge, Mark Dunham, Ken Creech, all of those guys played such a big role in supporting me as a student in my journey. And again, if I can be that for my students, then at the end of the day, I will have considered a job well done, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, those are some big names, and some that I know well, but others that I just know
Sure.
from the pipeline, just sharing stories of these are the foundational heroes that helped build what became the College of Communication now. So just that
Absolutely.
constant evolution. So thank you for sharing all of those incredible names like that. That's wonderful. And everyone, to make sure that Dave and his students are getting the proper props here, 88.7 The Pulse, KVIT FM, based out of Phoenix. So I don't know if you guys stream online as well, but
absolutely. We do. We are, thanks for the shout out. We are a 15,000 watt full power FM radio station. So not the 48,000 that WAJC was, but certainly not the 180 watts that my high school station was and still is. I believe wattage wise, we're like the second most powerful high school radio station in the country. Our main campus and the studios are in Mesa, as you said, in the Phoenix area. But our listenership is the entire Phoenix metro area. So it's pretty incredible. And I remind the students this every day. It's pretty incredible that you can crack the mic open and know that there are probably people listening to you. Whereas in high school, and it was like that for me at Butler too, it's Indianapolis and it's afternoon drive and we're 48,000 watts. And it's not just my parents and my friends listening to me because the signal doesn't just travel around the block of the school into the two suburbs that the students come from. This is like a major city.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't think some of my students like grasp that concept sometimes of just how fortunate we are and what an incredible tool that we have here at EVIT, for short, East Valley Institute of Technology. But yeah, 88.7 The Pulse. We do stream on our apps, and we also stream on our website, which is 887thepulse.com.
love it. Getting that tag, getting that promo
right.
put in there like a true professional.
That's right.
Getting back to Dr. Anokwa,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of you've talked about some of your younger stories, but you mentioned
Sure.
that you did have a continuing relationship. How did that continue once you became an adult and, you're out being a professional?
I think it was just a matter of me deciding this is a guy I want to keep in touch with. This is a guy that I want to still be in my life. And at that point, he had completely embraced Teresa. He loved Teresa to death. When we had our first child, when we had Tia, we made a point. And again, when we lived in Chicago, we were in Chicago for 19 years. Chicago to Indy, that's an easy drive. Phoenix to Indy, a harder trip. And which is why I was so grateful for the invitation a couple of years ago to the WAJC reunion, because I finally had a reason to go back to Butler's campus, and it had been a long time for me. But But with Kwadwo, when we drove down to Indy, taking Tia down. I think we were going for a basketball game. And I made a point of letting him know, hey, we're going to be in town. Are you going to be around on Friday? Yes, I'll be in my office. I'll be in Jordan. Come and see me. And I have the most amazing picture of him. He took Tia, who was probably about a year old, maybe, and he bounced her on his lap, and he sang her an African lullaby. And she just looked at him like mesmerized, like big eyes. And I've got a picture of him with this big smile on his face as he's doing it. And when I saw the news on Sunday, that was the first thing I did, is when I went to go look for that photo. I just felt like I needed to find that photo. There were other times where, when the girls were older, I'd let them know, hey, we're coming into town. And there was one trip where he's like, I've got class and I've got meetings on Friday, but we're going to be around Saturday night. Why don't you come over to the house for dinner? And I said, but we're going to have Tia. And he's like, I don't care. Of course I want you to bring Tia. And so we went to his house for dinner. And I'll just say this, and he's right up there with those mentors that I mentioned before, as well as mentors from the broadcasting industry. I'll tell you a quick story. So in 1998, my career, for whatever reason, there was a new ownership of the radio station I was working at. And I saw it as an opportunity to move up. And I had been anchoring weeknights for 3 years prior to that. And I saw it as an opportunity to move up. And for whatever reason, I kind of was the forgotten guy who was ended up on the cutting room floor, and I ended up being moved to overnights. And it was during that 6-month stretch that I'm like, okay, let's be a little proactive. I don't like where my career is heading right now. There was one day that I just decided I wasn't working, and I decided to drive down to Indianapolis and to check in with all of my mentors. And one of them was Kwadwo. I remember we had coffee. I remember talking to Scott Bridge and catching up with him in his office. I remember going to a couple of the different radio stations, the commercial stations in town, and gentleman Joe McConnell, who was the voice of the Colts, and the Bears when I was growing up as a little kid, who I had the pleasure of working with in my first job out of Butler. My last stop was at his house for a while. And that day meant a lot to me. It really did. And it was just every one of those people, including Scott and including Kwadwo, said the right things, did the right things, because they saw I needed this boost of confidence. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't happy with the direction of where I was going. And I just felt like I needed to check in with my people, check in with the people that I knew believed in me. And yeah, like I said, that day will always stick with me. Not just Kwadwo and Scott, but the other people that I had an opportunity to visit with that day. Yeah.
That is special. And thank you so much for sharing that. Like, these are the stories that, being able to do a podcast and turn these around relatively quickly, and having someone like you across the country saying, oh yeah, I can be available quickly, like that. Absolutely. That's what this is all about. So thank you so much for that.
You bet, Ross.
And Dave, thank you overall for helping to celebrate and commemorate the life of Dr. Kwadwo Anokwa. Do you have any overall final thoughts you'd like to share, or anything that the class of 2030, we had academic day yesterday. Do you have any advice for the students that just started?
Advice for the students just started would be the same advice I give to my students who are juniors and seniors in high school. And that is, be a sponge and soak in everything, because and you and I touched on it earlier in the conversation, because the industry now is very different from what the industry or industries were when I was a student coming out of high school and coming out of college. You kind of specialized back then, and you can't really specialize now. What I tell my students is, you never know, because our program is two-faceted here. We have the radio program, and we have music and audio production. And while I teach the radio curriculum, I have an outstanding co-teacher who teaches the music and the audio production. And together we make up our program. And we always tell students, you're gonna get it from both sides. Even if you don't think you like radio, you need to learn radio, and vice versa. Even if you don't think you're gonna like Pro Tools and music and audio production, you're gonna learn it because it's going to make you more versatile at the end of the day. And the more versatile you are, the more hireable you are when you're done and when you leave. And you can look back and say, here's the other thing. You never know what skill is going to help you land your first job. For me, my foot in the door at WAJC, it was not sports. I wanted to do sports. Everybody knew that. But my foot in the door was getting to host Interlude, an afternoon drive jazz show, because Mark Dunham, who was the general manager of the station, all right, I'll share this, and I know we've gone a little long, but second day of class, Jack Tiller, who was our faculty engineer at the time, Jack Tiller is taking attendance for our class, and Dave Juday, yeah, that's me here. Oh, you're Dave Juday. I'm like, what did I do? It's the second day of class. How am I in trouble already? Digs into his pocket, gives me a quarter, and says, go down the hall. We're in the basement of Jordan Hall at the time. Go down the hall, there's a payphone. Go and call Mark Dunham at the radio station. Okay. So I walk down the hall, call Mark Dunham, and essentially the conversation went similar like this. Hey, I hear you have experience doing radio in high school. I do. I hear you're not afraid of the microphone. Mic opens, you're not going to freeze. No, I'm good. Great. I'm having trouble filling a programming slot. It happens to be Tuesday afternoons. It's Interlude. It's our new age and jazz show. Are you interested? Me. Mark. Look, freshmen don't get these opportunities. Me. What time do you need me at the station?
That's it.
That was my foot in the door. That was my foot in the door. And by the end of the fall, I was able to go and be the color commentator analyst on Butler's last football game for
wow.
WAJC. I got to go to Saginaw Valley State with Roger Grossman, who was the sports director at the time. And that was my sports debut. So at the end of the day, you don't know what skill is going to help you get your foot in the door, which is why you should soak in as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. Say yes and roll up your sleeves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Or as another one of my colleagues here at EVIT says, be in the business of saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That opens so many doors.
No doubt.
Or at least a window or a crack or something to sneak through to get your hold there. So
yep, absolutely.
Very sage, wise advice there. So thank you, Dave. Bulldogs and supporters, thank you for watching, listening, however you're consuming this right now. Rest in peace, Dr. Kwadwo Anokwa. Thank you for your positive impact on the Butler community, students, everyone else that you left just such a great impact on. And Dave, thank you for sharing your stories to help commemorate him.
My pleasure, Ross. Thank you.